Madam Speaker, first let's get the record straight. Cape Town does have RDP sessions. Madam Speaker, yesterday we heard a speech dressed up as a recovery plan. But if one strips away the slogans, the applause lines, and the election year optimism, what remains is a deeply political budget built on uncertain funding, a deferred infrastructure, and promises the city cannot honestly afford. The Deputy Mayor tells us this budget chooses discipline over drift. Madam Speaker, Johannesburg did not drift into crisis, it was governed into crisis. A city with a 220 billion rand infrastructure backlog does not arrive there accidentally. A city losing 44.7% of its water and 27% of its electricity is not experiencing temporary pressure. A city surviving on only 9.8 days of cash coverage is not financially stable. These are symptoms of long-term governance failures. Margaret Thatcher once said, "Standing in the middle of the road is very dangerous. You get knocked down by traffic from both sides." And that's exactly where the ANC-led coalition now finds itself, trying to satisfy political constituencies, organised labour, national treasury, struggling residents, creditors, and election year pressures, all at the same time. The result is not leadership, the result is paralysis disguised as balance. Madam Speaker, let us deal directly with the politically facilitated agreement, the PFA. The ANC benches speak about the PFA as though any concern about affordability is somehow anti-worker. That is intellectually dishonest. The DA believes that all city employees should be compensated fairly, but what we do not support is unfunded political commitments, because the uncomfortable truth remains. The funding of the PFA has still not been fully secured. The Deputy Mayor openly admits the city is still engaging National Treasury and the Minister of Finance regarding this fiscal implications. So let's stop pretending this matter is settled. It's not funded, it's not fully resolved, and the financial risk has simply been shifted into the future. Madam Speaker, a responsible government secures funding first and makes promises second. This administration has done the opposite, and someone will ultimately absorb the costs. It's either our residents through tariff hikes, infrastructure through further maintenance delays, or future council through additional debt pressure. This is not financial discipline, that's political expedience. Margaret Thatcher warned, no one would remember the Good Samaritan if you only had good intentions. You had money as well. Good intentions do not fund municipalities. Cash flow does, and right now Johannesburg finances are dangerously constrained. The city itself admits that certain communities will not see capital investment because available resources must first go towards debt obligations and creditor settlements. Think about that statement carefully. Infrastructure is effectively being placed on hold in parts of the Johannesburg because the city is paying for years of accumulated financial mismanagement. Roads delayed, stormwater delayed, housing delayed, public environment upgrades delayed, community infrastructure delayed. Yet residents are expected to applaud the government for postponing development in the name of recovery. Madam Speaker, the DA believes in protecting indigent residents. No one disputes the need for social support in the city battling unemployment and poverty. But compassionate governance also requires accurate governance. The speech boasts over 145,000 households who are registered for the extended social package. The critical question is, how accurate is that register? How many households still qualify? How many fraudulent registers exist? How many residents are generally qualify are excluded because of the administrative dysfunction? And how many revenue leakages is occurred through weak verification systems? Because if indigent management is inaccurate, two things happen simultaneously. The truly vulnerable are failed, and the paying base is unfairly burdened. A social support system without rigorous verification becomes fiscally unsustainable. And sustainability matters, because if the city collapses financially, indigent residents suffer first and the hardest. Madam Speaker, Housing is another area where rhetoric and reality are worlds apart. The speech proudly announces social housing, hostel upgrades, inclusionary housing and catalytic projects. But Johannesburg residents know the lived reality of many city-owned housing developments. The problem is no longer merely housing delivery. The problem is maintenance collapse, and nowhere is this more obvious than at the Johannesburg Social Housing Company. Joshco has become a case study in what happens when government prioritizes expansion over maintenance. Residents in multiple developments continue to face broken lifts, sewage leaks, poor security, deteriorating infrastructure, water interruptions, unsafe living conditions, and painfully slow maintenance response times. The ANC speaks consistently about spatial justice, but dignity also means maintaining the housing stock people already live in, because handing over keys means nothing if the buildings are then neglected into decay. Madam Speaker, the budget is political from the beginning to the end. It's political in its timing, it's political in its promises, political in its labour positioning, political in its selective memory, and political in its attempt to rewrite Johannesburg's governance history ahead of the elections. The ANC attacks the DA while simultaneously adopting the very principles the DA has advocated for years: infrastructure-led budgeting, revenue recovery, utility reform, ring fencing, performance management, and fiscal discipline. The irony is remarkable. After years of dismissing financial realism as anti-poor, the ANC now arrives in council speaking like a reluctant accountants because reality has cornered them. Madam Speaker, the greatest indictment of this budget is not what it says, it's what it quietly admits. It admits infrastructure investment is constrained. It admits capital rollout is conditional. It admits maintenance was neglected. It admits debt obligations are crowding out development. It admits revenue collection is weakening, and admits the city's financial position remains fragile. This is not a city confidently moving forward. This is a city attempting to stabilize after years of political and administrative failure. The Democratic Alliance believes budgets must be honestly funded, maintenance must happen before collapse, indigenous support must be accurate and sustainable, salary agreements must be affordable, housing must be properly maintained, and every rand spent must produce measurable value for residents, because governments exist to deliver, not narratives. Madam Speaker, the Deputy Mayor says discipline today is investment that makes tomorrow possible. On that point, finally we agree, but discipline delayed becomes decline entrenched. Johannesburg has paid the price for too many years of political indulgence disguised as governance. The residents of this city deserve more than another term. The residents of this city deserve more than another term of explanations. They deserve a government that works, and in November, residents will decide whether Johannesburg continues down the road of managed decline or returns to competent, accountable government. Vote DA and for Helen Zille as mayor, the only true mayor with a proven track record. I thank you.